So hey team, welcome to the session on Coffee with Prabh. And today we have Mr. Anant Shrivastava. And Mr. Anant required no need of introduction. He's already a well-known name in the information security industry, known for his offensive and defensive skills. And he has total 15 plus year of experience. And it is really a great honor for us to have Mr. Anant in this session. Anant bhai, thank you so much for taking out your time for this particular session. I'm really, really happy that you are part of this session today. And I'm sure from this session, we can able to provide more and more inputs to our the upcoming aspiring candidates who basically making their career in cybersecurity, which is include your red teaming, pen testing, and all that. Thank you so much, Anand bhai. And when it comes to Anand bhai contribution, he did a lot of contribution in the past. Passively, I monitor his success in the lot of conferences like NullCon, Garage for Hackers, Null Bhopal, OWASP Bhopal. Along with that, a lot of international conferences like Black Hat, DEF CONs, and all that. He also known for his lot of authorships in a lot of documents on OWASP and ASVS. And this is all from my side. And hi Anand sir, how are you? I'm sure like thoda sa main kaamp raha hu. So thanks for giving your time for this particular session.
Hey Prabh, the pleasure is all mine. Thanks for the lovely introduction.
So Anand sir, we receive lot of I've seen a lot of trend in the cybersecurity which is changed in last 10 years. There was a career shift from ethical hacking to the pen testing, and now there is a new trend is happening about red teaming. So I always receive this kind of receive a lot of questions on how to make a career in cybersecurity, or especially in the red teaming or pen testing. So do you wish to share your experience on this area?
Okay, so like you said, the recent trend is red teaming. The new catchword which is going to soon start replacing red teaming would be adversary simulation or emulation kind of side. Now, effectively, one thing that we all have to keep in mind is that now the whole field is a professional area. Earlier, when we started, it used to be a hobby. So there were different approaches towards learning things. Now the trend is changing, that this is now a viable career alternative and career option, to be honest. And people are basically willing to make this as a career option. What that means is that all of these fields that we are talking about, say red teaming, pen testing, all of these, there is a trend going on where people are looking for a structured learning methodology that, hey, can you give me 10 pointers? I will just learn those 10 pointers and I'll be eligible for a job. This is where there is a slight miscommunication that is going on. Like I said, the field is becoming a career option. It is not yet at the part where it is a full-fledged career option and there is a full-fledged learning paths around it. So we are still in that zone where you need to do a lot of hands-on stuff on your own. It's not going to be that you can learn A, B, and C and you are a fully qualified information security professional. That's something that does not happen. Like, for example, if you compare it with, say, engineering, or if you compare it with, say, doctor, rather the MA, what is that? The whole doctor, the journey of a doctor.
PhD and doctor,
yeah. So there is a defined path that if you want to learn this, join this college, this degree, and once you are done with this degree, MBBS, sorry, I was missing that name. So once you're done with MBBS, you are in that position where you can treat patients. We are not in that zone. So certifications or learning paths are there. Everyone is trying to figure out and fiddle around with this, that, okay, what can I teach others so that they become competent to be the said professional? So right now, I don't say that, yes, just follow these 3 things and we are done. What I would definitely recommend is basically try and understand what are you getting into. Because red teaming, as you said as the keyword, is not something which is on its own day one profession. To become a red teamer, you'll have to do a lot of other things beforehand. So to give a context for audience, in information security domain, there are multiple job perspectives that are there. Of all the job perspectives, there are two major perspectives that come up, or rather three: offensive security, defensive security, and compliance. So if we leave aside compliance and defensive security, we're talking about offensive security here. In the offensive space, the approach is that you act like an attacker and you try to emulate how an attacker would attack the environment. Now, this is where the way it started was, can we automate it? So the way of automating it was via different tool set that is there. So there are n number of tools. There is OpenVAS, which is the
IP
open
and
source
scan
one.
the system.
Yeah, there is Nessus. There's n number of other tools which are scanning tools. What you do with the automated scanner is basically what you call as vulnerability assessment. Now, the moment you start looking at it from an actual human being doing stuff around it, or a semi-automated approach, this is where you move from the realm of vulnerability assessment. Now, this is where again there are two parts of it. One, you are contracted as an external person to look at the environment and tell us what is wrong in our environment. It will be a time-boxed approach where you'll have a fixed time frame. So you basically run some checks, you do some manual analysis. This is what is called penetration testing.
Okay.
Once you're done with these two, once you've explored the automated analysis, the manual analysis, that's when you realize that there are still avenues by which an attacker can come inside.
Okay.
Scenarios like, what if I have a malicious insider?
Okay.
What if someone does not tells me that I'm doing an assessment and randomly attacks me everywhere? Within an organizational hierarchy, generally what happens is, once an organization becomes aware that they have some security weakness, there are two approaches that they take. They either fix it, or they decide, hey, this is not a big issue right now. We'll fix it either later, or we will not fix it. What if someone attacks those endpoints which are deemed not fixing right now or won't fix? So these sort of scenarios, which are edge cases in general senses, but are realistic scenarios, because of an actual attacker is not going to look at your sheet and say, okay, yeah, these are 10 things you have said that you're not going to fix, so I'm not going to attack here. Rather, they're going to attack just there. So this is an area which was missing. How do you explore this? So this is where people started the process, which was red teaming. The term actually came from the military background, where the whole idea is that the country hires consultants and basically tell them, hey, devise a plan how you're going to screw up my country, whatever you can do. So they're given an open path and they're asked to devise a plan. And then the team works towards fixing those things. So a red teamer is supposed to do exactly that for an organization. Your infrastructure, your web applications, they need to come up with weird scenarios. They need to come up with n number of ways in which they can screw up the environment. And then they need to validate it. So I believe a red teaming engagement should not be a time-boxed assessment. A company would be hired that, hey, I want you to do red teaming. You have the task, you go ahead and do it. There are some things which you are not going to allow a red teamer to do, but mostly it will be open slate. Like, for example, things that you will not allow your red teamer to do. Stalk your employees on their personal Gmail IDs or their personal IDs and hack privacy, their personal accounts. So that kind of stuff is what you're going to refrain from doing. But other than that, you are going to give them a clean slate and an open area, do whatever you want to do, try and gain access into the environment. Now, the reason I gave you this context, now we know what red teamer is supposed to do. If you want to be a red teamer, what do you need to learn now?
That was my next question only. Like, what skill is basically required? Because there is a lot of assumption, there is a lot of misconception about the red teaming and pen testing we have. Is, do we need to know scripting? Do we need to know programming? I have a 20 year of experience in the IT. Can I move to red teaming? It is something is a money making. So what is a skill? What is a skill is required? Or do you have any kind of any content on YouTube or anything you would like to suggest to the aspirants that okay, you can go through this process and you can get the idea of to become a red teamer, because no one is perfect in security, because 100% security itself is a myth. So no one can be a pro in red teaming and all that, because every day new exploit, new TTP comes, and it is very difficult for anyone to have an up-to-date idea about the attack techniques and all that. So what is a skill, Anand, required for to become a red teamer or pen tester, if you talk about the current scenario?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things here. One, let's talk about what are the skills that are required. So anything that is required to do vulnerability assessment or pen testing is sort of a baseline requirement for being a red teamer. What I mean by that, as part of vulnerability assessment, you're basically running tools and analyzing the output. So you should be able to validate the output that you have received. So if someone says, or if a tool says your website has a cross-site scripting attack on it, can you validate it? And when you try to validate it, what are the hurdles that you face? So when it comes to web application security, when it comes to say mobile security side of things, I am not just going to give resources around red teaming only. I'll talk about pen testing resource also, because people will need to know pen testing before they get into red teaming style.
True.
So for say web applications or say mobile applications, the best resources that you have right now are the web application security testing guide and the mobile security testing guide, which are created by OWASP. So
okay. But before that, anything like if the person having a non-programming background, or like if you talk about, there are some folks who don't have a BSc experience, a BSc IT or BCA and all that. So what is a baby step for them? Like if you talk about from a zero,
if you don't have any programming background or you don't have much experience with computers, the way I used to suggest people is start exploring what is there in your system. So my approach is always a slow process. It's not like you go for 3 months and you're done with everything. So it's a slow process. Start understanding what you're dealing with. And it does not mean that you need to be a Linux user or a Mac user or a Windows user. Whatever operating system you're using, start understanding how your computer is ticking. So for example, when someone says, okay, I am a Windows user, how does Windows actually boots and gives you the whole interface? What happens when you click a start button and search for something? What are the places where it is searching for? Start with those baby questions. So these are questions. The answers are going to be very complicated, very lengthy, very complicated answers. The point is you need to start digging into it. If you ask me a core skill that everyone needs, that core skill is going to be two parts. One, patience to read as much content as you can. And two, patience to troubleshoot. In our area, you will find scenarios where things are not going to work. Whatever tool you use, whatever script you use, whatever things you are attempting, you will find a blog post which will say, hey, you do these 5 steps and it works. And in your environment, it is not going to work.
Different. It cannot be copy-paste.
Take me on a number percentage, I would say 60 to 70% times it is not going to work. Things would have changed, environment would be different, there would be differences. The patience to actually try and figure out what could be wrong is one essential thing, and this comes on the back of being able to read as much content as you can.
So what is the content mean? Like when we're talking about the content, like what is the content?
When I say reading skill, what I'm saying is, let's say you took a tool. Let's take a very basic tool. Nmap is a tool which everyone would use for post scanning. Let's say for your environment, Nmap is taking too long a time to scan one particular IP address.
True.
What is going on? Now, to understand this, you will have to start looking at what are the options in Nmap, what different options I can try, how can I get more details about it. Now, to get this, you will start with a basic Google search. Like, how can I get more details about Nmap scan? And then there will be n number of content that you will get. You need to be in that zone where you are not hesitant. Okay, I'm not going to go after 5 links, or I'm not, I need the right answer in the first link. You will end up reading 5 to 10 links or 20 links, and you will then find the answer that you're looking for. And when you attempt it, you will realize that's not the answer. So you will again go back and read more. So the patience to keep reading, the patience to keep taking notes, storing that information that you've gained, which could come back and be useful for you at a later point. That's an essential skill. The reason I said this as an essential skill, because this is one skill that I found lacking in a large chunk of people.
That is the same thing, because if I suppose I want to do the port scanning, I will go to YouTube and see how that Prabh is doing the Nmap scanning, copy the step-by-step process. But one important thing is that they don't understand what is the process behind the scanning. If I'm doing a port scan in terms of TCP scan, fin scan, first understand how the fin scan works. Understand TCP scan works, then only you can run the tool, because tool can change tomorrow, so you should be sticking to the process. So process understanding is also very important.
Exactly. Once you have the patience to start reading stuff and give time to reading things, that's where things like the guides that I was talking about, they'll be helpful. Because when I'm talking about web application security testing guide, it's a 350-page document. The problem that I've seen is people are like, okay, I can go and read it, but right now tell me 5 things that I do, and I start getting bug bounty. That's not the approach that you need to take. And this is where the fun part would be. You use the term red teaming, and the way, so I was thinking about this, and the way you have to look at it is, red teaming starts where bug bounty ends. Whatever you can do in bug bounty is nowhere close to what you're going to experience in red teaming. Red teaming basically is far more in-depth, far greater coverage is required. So
any difference is there between pen testing and red teaming, or this is the
there's a big difference. People always confuse these two terms because it's in the best interest of industry to convolute these two terms so that you can sell pen testing in terms of red teaming, or you can sell red teaming in terms of pen testing, and vice versa. Mostly pen testing is sold in terms of red teaming because red teaming gives you more money.
Exactly. So Anand, if you can able to share 5 minutes on that red teaming versus pen testing, it can be a great awareness for our users.
So, like I said, pen testing is generally a time boxed assessment. You are given a task, you're given a very specific task that, hey, find flaws in my application. So I'm going to take a web application example. Find flaws in my application. The way pen testing operates is a mixture of automation and manual. So a couple of scanners are going to be run, and then you're going to basically see if you can if you can find flaws by manually inspecting the web application. So you're going to try different kind of payloads at different places. You're going to assume a behavior and then you're going to validate it. Like, for example, if there is a login page and then after the login page there's a profile page, one assumption would be, what if I directly go to the profile page? Can I access it directly? So the whole information security assessment area is about being creative with assumptions and validating those assumptions. Now, within a time boxed space, within a very defined context, if you do that, that's pen testing. But when your context becomes loose, like, hey, you know what? I want to know what are the weak points in my organization. This is my organization name. Go figure out whatever you can. and you're
More like
basically given
unstructured.
an open hand. Yep.
More like
You are
unstructured.
not. Exactly. The other difference would be mostly when you're doing pen testing, you would ask for exceptions. Like for example, if the web application is sitting behind Cloudflare, you can basically go and ask the client that, hey, give me an exception on Cloudflare, so my traffic directly goes to your application. And there's a valid justification behind it.
True.
I am doing a time-boxed assessment. I have small amount of time to figure out as many flaws as I can. Remove the barriers for me so that I can actually inspect your application directly.
End to end.
I'll be able to give more result. Whereas when you're doing a red teaming assessment, you're not going to ask for exceptions. Your defense team might not even know that you are there or you're doing some assessment. You are also assessing the response of your blue team, how exactly the blue team responds. So if they see a phishing attempt, so as part of your red teaming engagement, you might have to send some fake emails. So if let's say your organization is abc123.com, you can maybe send a phishing email with abcl23.com domain. If your blue team sees this, if someone reports this, what does your blue team do? A lot of times what you will face is the blue team goes about and reports that domain, and the domain gets blocked by the domain provider.
Yep.
So all these situations are realistic scenarios that will happen in red teaming because you are an adversary to them. You are not a known entity analyzing the system. You are an attacker who are doing attack on the system. The system is going to be fully tuned to throttle your attacks.
True.
You have to deal with it. So with red teaming, this is why I keep saying with red teaming, your experience requirement is far bigger compared to a pen tester.
And you need to be very mature because you should be very careful with your testing process and all that. It should not disrupt. Because sometimes we have a compliance and we have some kind of a regulatory requirement. Definitely we have a free hand, but it doesn't mean that we should.
Yeah, obviously you cannot do a full-fledged blast on the website or on the network and disable them, but that's the fun with red teaming. You might actually be hired to do exactly that.
True.
You might end up in a situation where a company comes up and says, hey, you know what? Every single DDoS protection measures that the world can think of, I have implemented all of them. I want you to take up your biggest and baddest DDoS gun that you have, throw it at me. I want to see what happens. Because the way it works is defense is also a factor of buying products.
True.
Sometimes the company might end up saying, hey, I spent a few million. I want to see whether they actually work or not.
And
instead of when an attacker. Yeah, exactly. Instead of when an attacker actually does it, I want to test it. So you might end up in a situation where you are asked to do those damages. And that's the fun tests that come up.
And that is the second point you covered, that creative skills or patience you need to have. Exactly. So in this case, the patience is required. That's the second most important thing.
So I've had a scenario where an organization was like, you know what? I have implemented N number of security on my email systems. I want you to create a payload which can bypass my email systems. I'm going to give you access to a mailbox of my environment so you can see what goes through. I'm going to give you access to a Windows desktop where you can exploit that particular payload. I am giving you 6 months time frame. Figure out an exploit which bypasses my AV, which bypasses my spam filters, which bypasses my email gateways and reaches the endpoint. I want to know that. And those were fun tests. You basically were given a free hand. So we were creating payloads left, right, and center. And we explored every single scenario that we could think of. 1 or 2 payloads were able to go through. And then they basically were like, okay, this went through. Now this goes to my vendor and they need to start adding protections against it. And then we were asked to, okay, check again, does your payload now goes through?
So changing the payload and
Exactly. So the payload and the whole craft around whether your domain survives the whole 15 days or 20 days of attack All of those are the fun and creative aspects of red teaming. But to get to a point where you understand why my payload was blocked, you need to be in that position where you understand how the payload mechanism works, how the payload building mechanism works, and how the payload detection works. So at the red team level, you are basically playing a blue teamer as well as a red teamer. So you are building the payload and you are preempting what a blue teamer is going to detect.
True.
So
you have to think like a defensive guy. Okay, what is the best way they can able to stop us? And according to that, you need to create an exploits and you need to modify the exploits. So coming to this exploit part only, so is it required any programming language even for the non-IT professional who want to make a career in this?
See, you can
honest advice.
Yeah, you can go a bit in the field without having programming exposure. It's not like you cannot do anything in this field. My advice around this has changed a bit. Earlier, my advice used to be you cannot do anything in this field if you don't know programming. You need to be able to, especially in the red teaming area, you need to know programming because you'll be customizing payloads left, right, and center. The thing that has changed is we are moving from the art side of equation to the science side of equation. Like I said, the field is moving towards being an established field, which means newer tool set is getting developed, more professional tooling is getting in picture, where the job of creating the complex payloads is slowly getting handed over to professionals who are basically doing this job for making money. They're building tools who are basically claiming that they are going to do it. Now, like I said, you can go so far. There is going to be a layer in the beginning of the setup where these automated tools are going to be your savior. You can use those automated tools, you can build payloads which are going to bypass a lot of AVs. But you will reach a point where you need the extra creativity. Like for example, I'll give you a very simple example. There are these AV which are AI based AVs. Now what they are doing is they're basically looking at every single payload that comes up in the world and they're trying to build protections against them. Now they have to run on systems which are used by users. So they have to be creative about it. Now the process by which an attacker's payload hides itself in the processes and tries to do a number of malicious activities are also some of the processes which are very similar to how the gaming engines operate. So there came a point, I think this happened 3 years back, there was a fun example. So there came a point when if you have this specific AV on your system, you can't play a certain set of games. Those games will slow down to crawl because the AV was adding protections against those games.
Avast, I believe.
No, it was not Avast. It was one of those silence or those newer AI variants of antivirus. So they got a lot of complaints about it. So they built a check inside their system. If the DLLs or if the binaries contain these strings, do not add protections on them. So they can operate at full speed. Now the moment this was figured out, all you had to do was in your payload, add those strings. The AV will not add protections and would allow you to go through.
That's true. So we can able to evade the EVD.
Exactly. This is not a conventional way of bypassing it. No one would have actually sat down that, hey, the games could be the answer to my trouble. Someone, probably a pentester or a red teamer who was also a gamer, ended up realizing my games are not getting blocked, but they use similar techniques. So they applied the same logic here. That correlation, that capability where they were in that position to deduce that this is happening and able to map that skill or that say the strings from that binary to the binary that they had, This would require the next level of skills.
So, if you can see a lot of tools are there which people use to say hacking, suppose email spoofing and all that. It was introduced for the functionality reason only. It is all about what is your thought process and how you use that against the offensive practice, like SMTP relay and all that.
There are going to be tools that are going to be available, but if you take the journey from say 1 to 100, you'll be able to reach till maybe 20, 30 with the assistance of tools only. But the moment you leave the crutches of tool and you start getting to a point where you're understanding the system, you're fiddling around with system, you move from 30 to 70. And then however creative you are, that's the journey from 70 to 100.
So creativity, like, at one particular point is basically necessity for this profile, I believe. Yes. Because more you think about
But look at it this way. This is where I've started not discouraging people who are not interested in programming, because this is becoming an established field. We keep talking about that there are so many job openings. No one is getting hired for the jobs because everyone is looking for all of these skills in that one package. The problem that comes is, and there's a very funny image where it is more of like you're having a Godzilla versus King Kong kind of a match in the interview, but when it comes to the actual job, you're basically just having a pew gun and you're throwing water guns.
Yes.
So that's the reality that everyone needs to understand. There are going to be jobs which do not require a lot of skills. Entry level people can actually be there. You also have to understand it is so the field is like Bollywood. In Bollywood, you have 1 million people trying to become the lead actor.
Yes.
The lead actor gets paid a bulk of money.
Yes.
Not the side actors, not the people who are in the crowd. But you do need people in the crowd. It's not going to be that there are not going to be people in the crowd. There is going to be a set of jobs which need people in the crowd, which need basic skills to get stuff done. Like, for example, a very basic example, someone whose whole job is going to be that you have to take this IP address list, put it into a scanner, click this, extract the report, put it in an Excel sheet, share it with someone else, and they are going to do the next set of jobs. These kind of roles are going to be there. They don't need you to have programming skills. And it's a viable money earning opportunity. It's not going to be a huge money. These are entry level jobs. They're going to give you some money. You're going to survive for some year. After which, if you want to continue in this field in the higher steps in the ladder, this is where you'll have to gain more skills. So the entry barrier is lesser now. You can enter the field without knowing programming by getting into jobs which don't require programming. But you got to understand that if you are thinking that, hey, I am going to be that multi-millionaire by just being in this entry level job, that's not going to happen.
True.
If you want to earn more, if you want to get into those high profile roles where you see people talking in conferences, delivering sessions around, hey, how I hacked a whole country or how I owned the entire Fortune 500 company, that's where you'll see creativity is still a requirement. Till you get to a point where the field becomes a science, everything is documented, everything is structured, and there is automation around everything. Till you reach that point, creativity is a requirement to reach that final mile.
So any resources you would like to recommend, Anand? These are the resources. Like any free resources, because as I said, that this video is more like a non-profitable, and we would like to give free education to everyone. So because there's a lot of misconception we have about Udemy, YouTubes, and all that. So do you wish to share any your experience about the material? Yeah.
Bunch of things around that. When it comes to certifications, I don't generally recommend taking certifications. And my logic is very simple. Certifications are expensive. I do not recommend people getting certifications until and unless it is becoming a very bothersome task. And the way I deduct a bothersome task is, if you have applied to 200 or 100 or plus companies, and a large chunk of them, say 50 plus of them, have rejected your resume because you do not have a certification, that's the point where you may think about taking that certification. But ideally, certification should not be taken to get into a particular job. The organizations, if they want you to have a certain skill set, should be funding the certifications. And that's kind of what has started happening also. A large number of organizations have now started doing this, that hey, we like your skill, you get in, as soon as you are in, I need you to have these 3 certifications, go prepare for them and take those certifications.
Makes sense.
So that's kind of a change that is happening in the industry. It is going to take some time, but it is there. So certifications is not what I recommend. But then the thing that you got to understand is, I am not recommending you to take certification. But that basically means your job is a bit harder. You have to prove your skills. With a certification, generally the idea is that, hey, if I have this certification, I know a bit about this. Although it's not exactly that you know everything about it, but it tells the interviewer that you know something about it.
Okay.
What will happen is, if you don't have a certification, you will need to prove your capabilities, which is via your blog posts, via your previous work, via your experience, via your learnings. So whatever you learn, generally what I recommend people is, see, in terms of offensives, there are 2 areas where people generally, or rather 3 areas where people can explore. There is network, there is web, and there is mobile and IoT space. All 3 of them have different entry barriers around it. For web applications, it's the least entry barrier area because you can very quickly get started with web applications. For web applications, things like I said, OWASP testing guide, then Burp Suite, which is a commercial tool, has a very good academy available where you can basically test around all sorts of web application related bugs. OWASP Zap is a free tool that is available. It has every single feature that you can think of in Burp Suite, which is the paid tool. It has every single feature in there. You just have to sit down and play around with it. So some experimentation is going to be required. See, if we are removing the certifications, we have to add self-learning in that place. So experiment self-learning is going to be there. For say web applications, the OWASP testing guide is my first recommendation. If that's not something that you want, like going full-fledged into reading a very big document, what I would suggest is Portswigger's Web Academy is a good place. It has structured learning content, and then with each content there is playground where you can play around.
Okay.
Right now it's free. I'm hoping it is going to remain free. So that's a resource that people can use. Besides that, let's say we talk about mobile. Again, mobile, OWASP has a good set of resources. And then network. Network is an area where resources are less in terms of written content. What I have found is there are a lot of YouTubers who have been doing good job. One of them being the IPSec YouTube channel, IPPSec YouTube channel. The reason I recommend that channel versus any other channel is because the person has actually taken time to do exactly what we were talking about. Not just saying type this nmap command and it gets done, but actually explaining what is going on in the background. So now again, we need practice environments. For mobile, again, when you go into OWASP Mobile Security Guide, there are n number of playgrounds and random APKs that you can find which are vulnerable applications. So you can play around with them. With network, this is where the trouble comes. You don't find a lot of network which are vulnerable and you can play around with them. So hack the box, hack this site, and there are a couple of other sort of vendors who are basically coming up with sort of a freemium model. So they give some things for free, some things as paid. My recommendation is play around with those. Now, there are going to be 2 sets of people. some who don't have compute power at their hands, they have to rely on sites like these to give them the environment where they can play.
Hack the box.
There are going to be, Hack the Box and others. There are going to be other set of people who have compute power in their hands. Like for example, we were talking about people who are freshers or people who are like 10, 20 years experienced. They're also freshers for us. For this field, they're freshers. But the difference is one person is there who might not be able to spend on resources buying compute power. Whereas the other person might be like, yeah, if I need to get a 32 core machine, I can get a 32 core machine. That's not a problem. So if you have that kind of people, there are a large number of vulnerable environments that you can set up in your own machines. So VulnHub is a good resource, VULNHUB, which gives you VMs that you can download. And those VMs allow you to play around with them. These VMs would have network services in them, and you can play around with them. For red teaming purposes, there is a very good resource called Detection Lab. What Detection Lab has is it has a set of scripts which allows you to build a complete Windows AD environment with all the detection mechanisms pre-built. So you have AD, you have a client, and you have a whole monitoring setup. So what I was talking about, that you put a payload in, and then you see how your monitoring system is reacting to that payload.
And we have a lab already who does for us, like, we can use that lab for that. Yeah.
Exactly. So a detection lab is basically that setup, but detection lab requires you to have compute power at your end. Now, this is where things have started to change a bit for students. I found that a large number of students are not aware of this, but there are free compute resources that most of the organizations provide to students. So there's a GitHub student pack. If you enroll for it, the enrollment requires you to have a valid ID card. And if you have a student email ID, that's even easier. You can enroll for GitHub student pack. What that does is it gives you a GitHub Pro account on one side. Plus it has tie-up with, I think, around 20-30 different vendors. So it has a tie-up with Namecheap, it gives you a free domain. It has a tie-up with Linode or I think DigitalOcean, and they give you resources like compute power for say 1 whole year. What I recommend students to do is leverage these resources, set up your own website. Buy a domain, it's free for you. Set up a server of your own, build a website of your own, and see how the whole build process works. Understand how the system operates. How do you configure Linux to serve your website? How do you configure Windows machine to serve your website? Play around with these resources. You don't have a reputation to protect. Your website is not known to anyone. Go ahead and keep making new website every single week, every single month. Experiment around with these free resources. Organizations want to have more people using their resources, so they're making these compute resources available for free. Leverage these resources to learn.
Anubhav, this is a very important information you have shared about, because this is something which I could not find in most of the blogs and all that about, having a domain registration website, understand how the build process works, because most of the blogs talk about, this is the website and this is how you need to hack. But what is a chemistry, what is the biology behind that particular configuration? No one is basically taking. And that is something which is missing in the coming, the current aspiration. They just are in the interest of bang, 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 but they don't want to know what is the process behind that.
So I'll give you an example, a fun example. So there are two sites. One is called Security Headers, I think .com, which checks for various security headers on your website. And there is a site called SSLLabs.com, which basically checks your SSL configuration or TLS configuration. I basically, because I was building my own sites and stuff, I took a challenge that I am going to get A or A+ rating in both these systems.
Wow.
The whole process of getting to A plus required me to fiddle with n number of settings just to understand why exactly a cipher is selected or how exactly a cipher is selected. What order should I keep for my SSL TLS cipher list? Gave me an understanding about how SSL works, how TLS works, how ciphers are chosen between a client and a server. And so I then looked at how, okay, I am trying to do this, I'm not able to do this, how others are doing it. So I ran a scan on Google, I ran a scan on Cloudflare, and I'm like, okay, they are able to do it this fast, how can I do that? So these interesting questions come up and you try to find an answer for them. The reason why these answer finding or the whole process of exploring is important, because you're going to commit mistakes. What will also happen is when you're going to look at the testing guide or these sort of official documents to understand how attack works, you'll be like, oh, you know what? This attack would have worked on my system because I did not configure this setting. Now you have made a correlation. How an attacker can operate and how a defender can operate and what defenders can miss.
Yes, yeah.
So now when you look at a website, so I was lucky to have a lot of people who were seniors to me who would basically give me guidance around things. So one of the person who was my boss in 7safe, Devashish Mohanty, he's one of the old...
He's in Qualys now. He's now in Qualys, I believe.
I don't know if he's in Qualys, but yeah, he is one of the old veterans in this industry. So the fun fact with him was, he would basically stand behind me, and when the test is starting, so I was a pen tester at that time, so I would basically be doing my web application checking of how things work, and he'll be like, Anant, check the login page, there is an SQL injection there probably. And 95% of the times, his guesses would be right. So I basically sat down with him as, how can you guess? I was just exploring the website. How can you guess? So he's like, see, I can see by extensions what's the application language that is used. I can see by the way the widgets are used or the color combinations are used, what kind of web developer we are dealing with. This is based on the experience that I have. Based on these sort of markers, the language in use, the server response time, the icon that are in use, there are common patterns which people are going to have. And then I started observing this for myself also. If there's a PHP site, there are certain things I would check immediately. And a large number of times what has happened is, before the vulnerability scanner has picked, so let's say I start a vulnerability scanner and parallelly I'm doing a manual assessment. Before the vulnerability scanner has picked a flaw, I might have picked it already because I'm looking for targeted markers. And the vulnerability scanner is looking for a broad spectrum. So this sort of ability to start understanding and correlating those points, it is a very interesting capability that you can develop if you start paying attention to your environment. So
that's true. The learning what we have this from this case study is that if you talk about your boss, like who under whom you have basically worked, the one thing is that he has an understanding about the things. That is why he was able to do those initiatives. Otherwise, until unless you don't know the concept, until unless you don't know the process behind that, you can't take those initiatives and all that.
Exactly.
So somehow base is very important.
Yep, base is important. And a lot of times people say that always find mentors, and mentors should be there to help, or you should be mentoring. I have a certain sort of hesitation when it comes to mentors. I don't like being a mentor to someone. I don't like being someone who people can look up to. And I think I've made this very clear in a couple of other videos also, that don't idolize people. The reason is, when you start idolizing, you start imitating all things that the person is doing.
Yeah, how Anand is doing, and I will do that.
Yeah, that's not how it is. it should simply be, there are people who know more than me. I can ask questions to them, and if I have asked a good question, I will get a good answer.
True.
So I am known on null mailing list to send out links which is like, let me tell you how to Google this. Most of the time I send those links when the question asked is as simple as, if I type that question in Google search, the first link is the answer. So if that's the case, I'll send that link. If it's an interesting question, like I've tried this, it does not work. These are the things that I've tried. That's when the curiosity peaks. Okay, if it is not working, why it is not working? Then I'll want to do a back and forth and interact with the person and try and give things to them. And that's,
or if I have this Anand is there to support me, so I know Anand will help me. So that creativity is gone because I know that Anand is going to.
Exactly. The crutches don't help at all. So you need to be a self-made person, and that can only happen when you basically ask questions to people when you are stuck. But you do your homework on your end. You do your own checks, your own attempts. So a very good example, I'm not going to name the person, but this is a junior of mine. One fine day, I was basically at a training institute of my friend. This guy was basically pestering him, and I was basically asked, hey, can you look at this guy? So this guy was like, okay, Anant, I don't know how Linux booting works. I want to understand that. So I ended up giving him a very basic idea, and it became very clear to me that he does not have the basic knowledge that is needed. So I gave him 2 links that, hey, before I talk about this, you need to learn these 2 things. 2 days later, the person came back. I read those 2 links. I went back to my question. I got the answer for my question. I went ahead and did these 2 extra things. Now I am stuck at how Linux init-rd works. So now the question changed, which basically meant the person went ahead, did their own work. Now I'm curious, now I'm interested, and now I want to help this person move to the next step. I am there, I or any mentor for that mentor, whosoever you consider as someone you can ask questions, and they're there to remove that roadblock from your path. They're not there to take your hand and walk you in the path. They'll remove that roadblock and you have to walk your own path. So that's the way I look at it. Going
that's a
back
very great
to
point. That's a very good point that, okay, until unless you don't bring the curiosity, you cannot be an innovator in that case. So that's the most important element. And this is something as a case study we can use to upgrade our skills and all that.
Exactly.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So now going back to the sort of resources that people need. Once you are comfortable with doing vulnerability assessment or doing pen testing, this is the point where you have an understanding of how network operates, how exploits work at a very nascent level, at a level where, okay, how can I use a metasploit command to create a payload, and what payload goes where, and how do I send the payload over? Maybe understanding of how SSH works, how RDP works, how you can make connections over a network, those sort of things. Once you have that basic understanding, this is where you are now moving towards, let's say, the topic of our choice, red teaming. Now let's say you want to move towards red teaming. The job of a red teamer is to check the preparedness of an environment against advanced attacks. Now, advanced attacks, what are the advanced attacks? That's the question that comes. So this is where Maitre, which is a US body, has done a very good job with a tool set that they have developed called Attack Framework. So what Attack does is it lists out all sorts of, various tactics and techniques that an attacker might actually use. And they've classified them. The interesting bit is they also keep a tab on different APT groups. So APT is Advanced Persistent Threat. These are like groups which are operating at a much higher level, and they may be nation state actors, they may be individual bodies operating against nations, but they are highly skilled people. Now, APTs are generally numbered, so APT 29, APT 34 or whatever. So they have a list of those APTs, and what they also then do is take that APT, and based on the analysis that different vendors have done, so Symantec would do their own analysis, McAfee would do their own analysis, Qualys would do their own, and bunch of these vendors will do their own analysis. So these guys would take all that analysis, these folks, and then what they'll do is they will map that to the attack framework. And what you will see is all the APTs use tactics and techniques from this attack framework itself. It's just the sequence in which those techniques are executed.
Information gathering, scanning, gaining access.
Exactly. So that whole process is outlined for you. Now you know how an APT is going to attack the environment. You now either can harden your environment against a specific APT. Let's say you are in a X country and you are, you know that your general enemies are A, B, and C. So any APT that is attributed to A, B, and C, you want that to be protected against. So any tactics, any techniques that are used for those APTs, you want absolute protection against that.
Sure.
For everything else, you can wait and you can slowly get in. Or you are someone who is basically going to get attacked from everyone. Let's say you are WikiLeaks, or let's say you are Snowden. There is no one who does not want to get access to the data that they have. So everyone is going to attack. So you want everything under the radar of attack to be protected against.
True.
So you would want to deploy protection mechanisms. So the organizations would deploy protection mechanisms, and the red team is responsible for validating those mechanisms.
Whether working effectively or not.
I've used the term blue team before. I've used the term adversary before. Now what is happening is red teaming, because people are convoluting red teaming with pen testing. So a new term. So the way it works in the industry is every 5 years you need a new term, because that's how the products sell. So the newest term that is there is adversary. So now adversary emulation or adversary simulation are there.
Yeah.
They're nothing but
breach attack simulation.
Exactly, breach attack simulation. They're simulating an attacker. Now there are automated tools that are coming up which are doing the attack in an automated manner. There are tools which are there are companies which are basically doing it manually. Now these adversary emulation stuff again is mapping these APTs. What they're doing is now they are offering you an environment which says, okay, you want to test against APT 29, click this button. I will perform an attack which is similar to APT 29, and I'll tell you how protected you are. All of this, whatever is being done automatically, can be done manually. Whatever is done automatically has always going to have certain set of limitations, which is where
will it take the jobs of red teamers? Like such innovation is there. Don't take me wrong.
The important bit to understand is automation is always going to take some jobs. When computers came, they took some jobs.
True.
The difference is those who were sitting crying that they took my job, or those who were like, okay, computer came, I just have to be reskilled in computers and I still have a job.
Yes.
So
how can I be better?
You just need to be in that zone where you keep a tab on what's going on in the industry. So this is where things like Mitre attack is there, or there are a bunch of different resources that people can actually leverage. I think I have a list somewhere. Just give me 1 sec. I was making a list. Yeah. So there are a couple of people who are basically doing good content generation around this. Rasta Mouse is one guy who does a lot of red teamer stuff out in public. Now, when it comes to red teaming, the problem is a lot of people only assume that red teaming is Windows attacks.
True.
The reason for that is because most of the time, whenever we are talking about red teaming, we're talking about an organization getting compromised.
Mm.
In which case, the attacks are generally on the weakest link, which is
True.
the users. So that's where a large number of organizations are Windows organizations. So Windows
True.
attacks are prominent. It's not that red teaming means Windows only.
Linux,
But
Mac,
yes,
networks.
Windows is a big portion that is there. So you need to be aware of Windows attack scenarios. So AD Security is one website which is there. They talk about Active Directory security a lot. And they come up with those weird scenarios. Like while people were looking at how to configure Azure AD, these guys were talking about how can I attack Azure AD from a compromised account on my local AD. And then once people started understanding that concept, they came up with the idea, okay, I have an account on Azure AD. I don't have anything on the local AD. How can I attack a local AD? So they are on the cutting edge of research around this. The way this operates is they are exposed to that environment day in, day out. That's how they are able to skill themselves up. So anything, wherever you want to develop your skills, make it a point to expose yourself. So for example, scripting. So there was a point where I wanted to learn how to write in Go. The only way I could think of was I have to take a task, and if I take a task, I am forcefully going to use Go to do that. So I took a weekend, and in that weekend my task was very simple. I have to write a program which goes to a website, downloads the HTML page, downloads the headers, and parse the headers and look for a string in the HTML page. That's it. I could have done that in Python in 30 minutes. I knew what modules to use, what to do, how to do. I started with, I can do this in Python, I want to do this in Go. Took me 48 hours, but in that time frame, my searches were, what is the equivalent of request module in Go? I would find something. I'd be like, okay, put it in, let's see how it works. Works, does not works, move to the next one. And I ended up in 48 hours with a very basic script, which did my job. But in that process, I learned about different modules that are there, how Go ecosystem works, what is different in Go, what is different in Python, how compiling works, how optimization works. So a question came was like, the Go binary that I was getting was about 30 MB in size. I was like, this is not good. How come it has 30 MB when I'm only doing like 5-6 commands? So I read about, okay, what is static compilation? How is static compilation being done? What can I do to optimize the build? And I ended up reducing the size down to, I think, around 15 MB or so. So all of that required a lot of reading, taking notes, going back to trying things. So
your
reading
point,
and
which is
troubleshooting.
patience and creativity. Because see, what can be done in 30 minutes, you accepted a challenge. Okay, if it's 48 hours, I will take 48 hours, get a understanding of a new language, and I can do better in that. And that shows, you know, the person persistence and patience and creativity in this particular thing, because you don't need to do that, but you did that.
Yeah,
but
I mean, that's how you're going to learn. Yeah.
But Anand, like, you know, and you know very well, you know, the competition is basically very high in the red teaming and all that. So as I know you very well, you are not a person who are very fond of certification, as I can see your LinkedIn profile also. You know, more than certification, I know I have seen a lot of publications and the publication, you will be surprised to know, even I will use in my CISSP and in my CSSLP trainings also. Like, okay, this is the white paper and this is how things works, like especially your RASP program and all that. So which you have cloud pen testing you're talking about. So I have used that reference for my CCSP and all that. So I am also one of your audience, you can say, one of your user. So my thing is that if there's a new aspirant, okay, he did graduation or he doing a graduation, so what is the best way to get a first job? Because, you know, nowadays, you know, HR is posting like we need a certifications and all that, but there is a lot of company, like I know that you're also starting something like that, where you don't want to set a certification as a barrier, wherever the skill. So how to get a first job?
I would rather suggest start from the very beginning. The moment you are, so while you are in college, that's actually the very good time to get started. don't hunt for job. You're in college. The good thing that you have while you're in college is you only have 6 hours that you are supposed to do stuff. Everything else is your own time. 6 hours of college is what you need to give. You are supposed to do something at that time. Everything else is you can devote however you want. This is the time when you start leveraging things like GitHub Student Pack and start building your skills. Parallelly, don't worry about whether what you are writing is something that people have already written. It does not matter.
It doesn't matter,
Build a website of your own. Put content on it, which is for your own sake.
Okay.
You are keeping notes for yourself, but you're keeping them in open. So whatever you learned, whatever you figured out, every single thing that you figured out, make a note of it. Make a blog post of it. What that does is, on one side, it acts as a book for you that this is what I did.
Okay.
2, it keeps enhancing your writing skills. You will keep looking back at your old writing and you'll be like, yeah, I can do it better. I can write better.
True.
And this is something you'll agree. After a certain point, tech is 50% of the job. 50% is communication. Emails, writing reports, all of this matter. Having written skills, having verbal skills help. So if you have a blog which is basically talking about all these things that you're doing, nowadays a lot of people basically have to, so if you're someone who's going towards web application side or network side, you might have to end up dealing with code. So why shy away? Start dealing with it now. So use GitHub pages for your hosting.
Great.
So use GitHub account because you are already GitHub Pro with the student pack. You can basically leverage all sorts of GitHub advanced features. Leverage all of them. Anything that is available to you for free, explore it. What you're doing is you're building that muscle which allows you to go extra mile and look at things from a different perspective.
True.
If you only work on Windows and you have never seen a Mac or a Linux, the day you get a shell on a Linux box, you'll be like, I got a shell, but I don't know what to do. And that's something that you can get rid of if you start exposing yourself to more things.
Yeah.
Besides this, become active in communities. Nowadays, it's far more easier to be part of a community. Earlier, there were barriers like you have to be in a particular city or things. How I've started looking at it, all of this is technology is there. You can spend time using it or abusing it or getting abused.
True.
You can spend time on Facebook or Instagram scrolling things, or you can spend time on Discord asking questions, getting weird answers, or helping others with your answers.
Open for feedback also. Open for feedback. Like whatever the content you're publishing, you should not be,
exactly.
You should take a feedback in a positive manner. Might be someone has suggested you.
One, take a feedback in positive manner. 2, always remember. So this is one word that people start knowing about since I think their first increment. Bell curve. So when the first increment happens, bell curve is a word that is introduced. Effectively, what that means is, if you take 100% of people, there are going to be 10% of them which are the outliers on both sides. On the best side, on the worst side. Everyone else is in the middle. So this is one thing that you have to remember. There are going to be people who are going to be very appreciative of what you do.
True.
There are going to be people who are going to be very, very sort of dismissive of whatever you do.
Yes.
That's fine. You are a student. You don't have any reputation to protect. You don't have any sort of ego right now. If they say you're wrong, tell me what can I do. And if they tell you something and that helps you improve, fair deal, you got something. If they say I'm not going to tell you, that's fine. I don't wait for I'm going to keep doing my own stuff. Now, the profile that you build by putting your content outside, by putting your articles online, by putting your journey outline, and then by being part of the communities, you start building that connects.
Expose yourself.
InfoSec still is a very sort of closed community. What it means is, a lot of times recruitments happen before the job is posted.
That's true. Yeah.
I have had people who are recruited before they graduate, or rather the day they say I am graduate, they got a job offer, because there were 20 people who were seeing this person delivering sessions, talking about their experience, giving people an idea of what they know for past 1.5 years.
Yeah.
So they were ready to offer them a job.
True.
Another thing which a lot of people don't know about, so this is where a bit of programming requirement comes up, but I suggest everyone to apply and everyone to experiment it. Google runs a project called Google Summer of Code.
Okay.
It's a paid internship. So they pay you, and they pay big time. What I recommend is everyone attempt to be part of Google Summer of Code.
Okay.
What that program does is, during your summer break, you work for an organization for a certain task that they may have. You get paid by Google. So the organizations are open source companies or open source projects like say React OS or Zap or these sort of tools who need people to work on it. So they will have set of tasks that they want to be done. A student will have to look at those tasks and say, yes, I can do this, and propose to the organization, I want to do this. This is how I want to do. If the organization selects you, you have 3 months time frame to do that job. And after the first validation, so there are two steps. There is one which is like a midway evaluation, and there's a final evaluation. At both evaluations, you get paid a certain amount by Google because you have reached that level. So if the organization says, yes, the project is going well, you get paid. So it's a paid internship. You're getting money to work on it. Even if you don't get money, explore these open projects, because these are the projects that are there looking for people to help.
And there's no risk for that.
Yeah, there's no risk. They'll go above and beyond to actually help you in learning those skills also. So you can participate in those open source communities, open source projects, and build your muscle around it. By the time you graduate, you should have things to show. And these are, so there is always an angle where people say, hey, you want people to do free stuff for everyone else in order to get a job. What I'm talking about is building your capabilities. By the time you graduate, it may not be necessary that you need a job. You are well versed. Yeah, you already have a name. There are people lining up to hire you. There are people lining up to give you money that, hey, you're doing good, take my money, build a project.
True.
Or you may have an idea of your own and you want to build something. Like, for example, Rips Tech. So Rips is a tool which is for PHP static code analysis. Rips, first version of Rips was made available on a website, and there was a tool that you could download and you can use. That tool was written by a student as part of their PhD thesis.
Okay.
Once they became a fully PhD, they finished their PhD, what they did was they created a company around that product. And they made a commercial product out of it. I think around 2 years time frame, they got acquired by SonarQube because they were the only good PHP code scanning tool. So you might end up building something which on its own allows you to sustain. So you never know where things would take, but the first step is to take the plunge. And doing that while you're in college is going to be far more easier. Let's say you are not in college, you've graduated, and now
And
you're
experience.
struggling with
Family is
you
there.
have some experience, family is there, you can't spend a lot of time, and you again then want to get a new job. This is where, because now you are an earning person, you already have earning coming into your pocket. This is where I will suggest certifications. See, certifications are a shortcut to accelerated learning. If you are going to try and find things on your own, you might take 6 months time frame. If you are with responsibilities, you might take 1 year time frame. Joining a 5 days boot camp might actually give you that edge over things.
Okay.
So, Prabh, I don't know, but it seems like the video is disconnected.
Oh,
yeah,
just give me a second.
Came back for me. Just a minute. Let me see if I can turn on the camera. Yeah, it's back now.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was saying was, in this case, I would suggest using certificates as a shortcut to gathering that input. The important bit is, do not aim for clearing the certification. What I've generally seen people doing is, I need to get this certification, let's clear the certification, by hook or crook, I'll get a job. You will get a job maybe, but you will definitely not learn anything.
And if the hiring manager is like you and me, who basically going to test on the bricks and then it will be a problem.
Exactly.
So the certification only filtered the CV, but you need to face the interview.
Yep. The certification is going to get you through that HR filter maybe. So that is where what I suggest is, use certifications, use these online learning medias to accelerate your learning, because you are boxed with time limitation.
True.
So instead of trying to find out and search for good resources, you can actually use these and get those set of resources and move from there. So that's the difference where I would deviate from my saying that, hey, don't put your money in. Don't put your money in the initial stages of your career, because certifications are damn expensive. If you talk about OSCP, it costs about $2,000 or something. You don't want to put that much money on the line and then figuring out that this is not the field that you want to be in. In the first 2 years or 3 years of your career, you should be exploring as many possibilities as you can.
True.
Pick up as many jobs as you can. The idea should be that I am going to figure out what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then when you figure out a good job option, then stick around with it. For people who are making a mid-career switch, what I would recommend is relook at your own skill set. And don't go for buzzwords.
Yeah, this is the fantasy word they have created. Okay, Prabh, even I had a conversation with one of the person last week also. He want to move into the pen testing or red teaming is because there is a good money and good finances there, because you can work as a freelancer. So that was something is a misconception people has, that okay, it's not something, okay, you can make a money in any field. It's all about the area of interest. That is the most important thing you require. Yeah.
There are two things around it. One, why that perception is there. It's social media has to do a lot to it. What people don't realize is that they see that someone is winning a bounty every single day. So they feel like the world of bounty is very big and everyone wins every day. No. A person wins once and then they don't win anything for a very long time, and then they win something again. But for you, because you're looking at 2,000, 3,000 people, everyone winning something, you feel like it's a constant stream. They're not all winning every day. They're winning some of the days, but combined together, it looks like a big thing.
Yeah.
The angle that I was saying in terms of relooking at your own skills. If you're someone who has a server admin background, don't look at becoming a pen tester. become a security auditor. You have far bigger skill set in being a security auditor.
Exactly.
Just like I was talking about a manager who would basically spot things. You would have seen so much stuff while configuring your servers. You would basically go and touch a server and you'll tell 500 things that are wrong in that server. Because you've been there in that field. Leverage it. If you're someone who's a developer, don't look at becoming a pen tester. That's a waste of your talent. Look at becoming a secure programmer, secure coding programmer, or going towards these specialized areas like say HSM programming. So the aim should be, and this is where everyone needs to figure out what are the unique areas where you can target yourself. Don't become a cattle in the whole herd where there is one path where everyone is going. That path is going to get saturated soon. There are so many other areas where you want to go. And so recently I posted this thing. If everyone is learning from the same set of resources, all of you are at the same level. What's unique about you? When I am trying to hire someone, I have 200 candidates. All of them look the same, have the same set of certificates, give me the same answer for the same set of questions. Why would I hire you?
True.
What is unique about you? All of these extra stuff that is there, all these experiments that you have done, for experienced people, whatever past exposures that you have, leverage that to become that unique identity.
Instead of just following the,
Exactly. So instead of saying I'm a pen tester, you could be far bigger auditor, and you can back that claim like, you have auditors who are like 5-year experience. I have 20 years experience in configuring these systems. I know ins and out of these systems. I can prove far quickly where misconfigurations are. So that becomes your USP. But if you are like, okay, I want to relearn and go into pen testing, then that's a whole different area that you're going in.
True.
But on the other side, if you're a QA person, if you're someone who have been doing functional testing day in, day out, I would definitely suggest to go become a pen tester. You'll be far more performant compared to any pen tester that is there. Because as a QA, you are actually conditioned to think about boundary conditions.
True.
You're conditioned to think about how things can go wrong. You just have to now start thinking how things can go wrong from a security context.
Exactly. What we have implemented, it's okay, but now we need to understand what is the offensive perspective about that implementation.
Exactly.
That was a great point, because I've seen a lot of, okay, my juniors are doing this, so let me do the pen testing. You already have a knowledge on the hardening side, you just need to know how to break it. Simple. That give you more add-on.
And like I said in the start, there is offense, there is defense, and there is audit. Pick whatever works for you. Money is there everywhere.
Exactly.
Money is there in programming also. Money is there in non-IT jobs also.
It's like an investment you're doing.
Exactly.
You can't get immediate returns, but yes, if you spend more time, you have patience, you'll get better returns.
Like once you reach a point in your life where you start looking at how salespeople operate, you end up realizing, okay, they earn a lot more. But then again, it's a different skill set, it's a different mastery that you have to do. Everywhere, wherever you put effort. So it's that, I don't know if it is a saying or a story. So that story where one person digs a hole every day to get water, whereas the other person digs a single hole for 20 days and they get water. Both the people basically dug the same distance, but there were 20 holes and this was one single hole. It's the same logic.
Consistency,
Yep. You put efforts in that one area and you get to a point where you are more. Important bit is, if you feel like you are underpaid, look up again. Are you feeling you are underpaid because a colleague of yours in a different firm is getting an insane offer, or is it that you are actually getting underpaid? Everyone with higher roles makes compromises. This is something no one is going to talk about, but as you move up in the ladder, you make compromises. You either make compromises in work or you make compromises in life, or you make compromises both ways. Everything looks glamorous from the outside, but the more money is given to you, the more expectations are there from you, and the expectations come with their own set of compromises.
True.
Either you fulfill them, or you basically enjoy the honeymoon phase for 1 year and then go to a new firm and enjoy another honeymoon phase for 1 year. But at one point you get tired of switching, and then you want to stick around, and that's where you realize that it's not worth it doing that many jumps or that many cycles. Stick around, gain experience, and then move. I'm not going to say that stick around in a company for a very long time frame. Loyalty concept is not a marker right now, but stick around enough to actually gain something. Don't just be a guest who's an observer and then move to a next firm, just taking that X on your LinkedIn profile that I am X this, X that, and X this. That works for entry-level jobs, that works for 5 years, 6 years in your career. After that, harsh realities are going to step in.
So Anand, like we can spend like 20 years in this field, like red teaming. Like if I'm in an age of 40 and I'm moving ahead to 60 and 70, can I see this this red teaming as a career, as a pen tester as a career for next 20 years?
Again, disassociate yourself from the rat race. Focus on your core skill set. Pick a specialization. Within red teaming also there is specializations. Like you could be the person who everyone has to come to when they want a certain AV bypassed.
True.
You know that AV ecosystem inside out. You can stick around in that job for many years. You can reach a point where you are basically so much knowledgeable in that area that a person is just going to pay you to sit around and tell people what to do.
Delegating a task, advisor.
You could be the architect, you could be the lead in that zone. You don't need to manage people. Nowadays, the startup world has opened up the space where you don't even need to manage people. You could be an individual contributor at a very experienced level. This was something that I did not see a lot in Indian firms, but I've seen a lot, and I have seen this since 2008. My first firm that I joined, I had 2 mentors from my client's organization who basically came in and to hand over the job that they were doing. It was kind of an offshoring engagement. But those 2 people were like individual contributors. They did not had any people reporting to them. And they were 59, 62 years of age. They were retiring and they were offloading this to offshore because they were like, we are not going to continue working. The company wanted to pay them and continue working in that position, and the company was paying them increments. So it was not like they were stuck with a fixed pay also. So a lot of startups are now offering this also, that you can be an individual contributor, you can be a full-time techie all the life, and you are going to get paid. It will entail a certain bit of interactions, because it is not going to be that you have to hand code everything. But you'd most probably be in that zone where you hand code some things, but there's a team working and you guide them and you make stuff happen for them.
So Anand, like if you're comfortable with this, like you're also you already started a new startup. So do you wish to share your experience about your new startup and what is into it to our subscribers?
So you want me to talk about experience of hiring people, or my company? What is my company itself?
Yeah, what is all about company, if you're comfortable?
So the company right now is sort of in a formative stage. The idea is to keep it small, power packed. So that's the reason I kept the name. I kept research in the name. So Siphonoid Research is what I kept as the name. The research element is going to be a primary constraint. So the idea is do random research stuff that I wanted to explore for many years. Research around those areas, confirm my hypothesis. There's lots of sort of what if scenarios that I have noted down. I want to explore and see what happens. Plus, there are lots of new stuff that are happening. Web3 is an interesting space, IoT is an interesting space, 5G is an interesting space, mobile is or handheld devices are an interesting space. So the aim is to explore these areas with a small team and then build stuff around it, give out content to open communities, give out content to people so that they can learn and understand things, maybe earn money via trainings, maybe do some consulting work around it. But the whole aim is more of around do whatever the hell I want to do, because I want to experiment.
I think you're also driving trainings on some niche projects. So do you wish to share these updates with our subscriber? Might be they want to reach out to you, and because you already said that.
So right now I'm basically, so one area that I've established a training around is attacking and defending Android applications. Because what you'll see now is the shifting trend where I talk with organizations who are like, hey, we have this idea that we are building and this is mobile first. They don't have a website.
Exactly.
All they have is, if you go to their website, it's a Notion page or a GitHub page, which is just a static content. And the actual app is only on mobile. So the entire ecosystem is sitting somewhere else. So how do you attack it? How do you protect it? So that's kind of, so the theme that I want to keep with my trainings also is attack and defend. So don't just look at attack, don't just look at defend, but look at how can you attack and how can you defend against it. Look at the holistic 360 view.
Yeah, one thing I would like to share with our subscribers, Anant is also currently handling one of the prestigious project of India, which is called, I think, Internet and Mobile Association of India. So when he's speaking about Android security, it basically makes sense because he was part of the prestigious project, which is basically, handling the mobiles, communication and all that.
To give a context around that, IAMAI is a sort of a government, as it's a semi-government with a partnership of various mobile vendors. It's an association. What I'm doing with them is a project called iCamps. And iCamps is basically a project for citizen assistance around mobile security. So there's a lot that we are working on. Hopefully in next couple of months we would be coming out with our application and bunch of other things. The whole idea is to give some sort of guidance, some sort of help to people who are either not security aware or are not in a position to basically spend time dealing with this.
Victim of scam, phishing and all that.
Awareness for them, guidance for them.
So you're heading the complete security project of that, I believe.
So effectively, I am giving them guidance around security.
Wow.
So they come up with questions around, okay, what could be the problems in the application space? What can we do to protect against this? And I'm giving my inputs around that.
Wow, that's great. So any last pointer you would like to share with our aspirants? So, I'm sure this is a very positive talk. Yeah.
Let me actually just quickly check the resources that I kept. I think I talked about Hack the Box, Miter Attack Framework. I talked about Rasta Mouse. There's an Indian person named Prashant Mahajan. He is also known as Corrupt in Null community. He runs a tool called AD Recon, and he has also now developed a cool tool called Azure AD Recon. If you are into Windows side of things, it's a good idea to look at that tool. And when I say look at that tool, look at it from 3 angles. One, what that tool does, how you can execute that tool and play around with it. It's a good tool for auditors because it gives you a very detailed Excel sheet based report format. For someone who's trying to understand AD, look at the internals of it. The code is open. So you can look at the source code, how exactly they're doing it, and learn from it. So don't just look at the tool, okay, this is one tool that I can do, but understand it. And if you have questions, contact Prashant. He'd be able to help you understanding how this whole thing works. And it's an Indian person doing stuff around Azure AD. So that's a good pointer to look at. Yeah, couple of things that I did not covered. For content around red teaming, for content around offensive stuff, look at conferences, look at say null community archives that are available. Also in DEF CON, so DEF CON conference that happens in USA, they have a lot of villages. Now villages, the concept of villages have a small sort of mini conference within the conference. Now there are villages for red teaming. So there's a village called Red Team Village. There's a village
Abhijit
called Adversary Village.
Abhijit
so Abhijit is handling the Adversary Village. Yep.
Yeah.
So there are 3 villages which Indians are basically leading. There's Adversary Village, there is Cloud Village, and Recon Village. So Adversary Village is one thing which is like the newer term. Red Team Village is the older term. There's also Blue Team Village. Now why I'm talking about these 3 is because they put out their content in public. So the resources that they have basically done as talks and sessions, they make it available. If it is recording, they make the recording available. If it is documents, they make the documents available.
Okay.
Go through them. Start finding the people who are talking about these things. So most of these people who are doing talks there are speakers who speak at other conferences also. Start looking at what they're doing. Whatever interests you, start following people who are doing similar things. Twitter, Instagram, whatever. There are people who are sharing good stuff. Follow them. Learn from them. Use the resources that are available to you for free to gain knowledge at your end. And keep documenting it so that others know that you know this.
Okay.
So that I think would be effectively what I would end with. Learn stuff and document it.
And patience and creativity. That's the most important thing. But thanks Anand bhai. I was expecting I'm sorry I have extended this session. And
that's fine.
We have discussed for 30 minutes now. It is more than 2 hours. It's about to be 2 hours. I'm probably sorry for that. But that's some pointers was there, which is basically found very interesting. I can bet you on that. You can't find those things on other YouTube content. Great that we have captured those pointers, which give even the better visibility to me. I was even not aware about the Google projects and all that. So one more important thing is that you cannot be a perfect in everything, so you need to have a constant learning on every area. So, and this is something a great writer for me.
Are you on the Null Discord?
No, I'm not.
Are you a Discord user?
No, I'm not.
Okay. I would suggest you also to get on Discord. There are so many things happening on Discord. There are 2 things that I didn't talk about. One is the Null Discord server.
If you can share that information also, it will be great. If possible, for next 5 minutes.
Yeah, I can do that. Just give me 1 minute. Another interesting resource set is basically a bunch of Discord servers. So the villages I was talking about, most of these villages have a Discord presence. DEF CON has a Discord presence. Null community, which is from India, has a Discord presence. OWASP has a Discord presence. All of these communities have a lot of people talking, interacting on these channels. So you should be involved in those. The way I would suggest is join a Discord server, see what kind of discussions are happening. If the discussions interest you, if the links that are shared interest you, stick around on that server. If they don't, if you feel like this is not where I'm going to learn something, leave that server. You can join back those servers again. But stick around for servers where you get stuff. The reason I said leave servers that you don't like, because if you keep adding servers, you will end up with a lot of servers, and then you will reach a point where you're like, okay, I don't want to use Discord. It's too much noise. So only keep channels, only keep servers which you are interested with, but use these resources. Again, Discord is a free resource for you. Use the resource and gain knowledge.
Yeah, there's a lot of free resources out there on
Yeah.
it's called Discord and all that. It's all about how you mind your informations, and limited will not give you learning, but okay, it should be quality, it should not be quantity, but it should be, you need to prioritize how you want to consume the informations and all that. And
So,
any other information you would like to share on Discord, Nalcon?
So just one thing about Null Discord server. So what we've done there is, so if you go on the Null community website, there's an option for social links, and from there you can get a Discord invite link and just add yourself in Discord. With Discord, what we've done is we've created sections. So there are channels where you can share information around specific topics. So like bug bounty, red teaming, pen testing, blue teaming, capture the flag, compliance, enterprise security. And what I've done is I've created a beginner's corner. And the whole point of that particular channel was to keep all these links. So stuff like student pack or hack the box, Vuln Hub, all of these links we keep sharing there. So whenever a new person joins, we would basically suggest them, hey, look at the beginner's corner. That gives you the initial sort of links and references on what to do, how to do.
Wow. So if possible, you can just share me the URL so I can add it in the description box of YouTube.
I can do that. Sure. So I'll share the invite link with you so you can add that in the channel.
Cool. Sure. Thanks Anand bhai. It is really a great pleasure to have you on this session, and for me at least it was a great session, and I'm sure when this session is going to be uploaded on YouTube, and it will be a great useful for the aspirants who are looking for the career in red teaming and all that. And I will sure that later on I will try to have you on again on some other topic which can basically give the better visibility to the aspirants. And really thank you for this Friday learning day for us, and we're looking forward for more sessions with you.
Have a nice day, Prabh.
Thank you Anand. Thank you bye. Thank you so much.